So, Kirby Air Riders is coming out in Thursday. I can hardly believe that. I had completely written off the possibility of this game even existing. I've loved it for years, the original, and I was just not convinced that we would ever see a sequel of any kind. It was just pretty unpopular when it came out. And the announcement of it was so recent that I'm still in shock, again, at its even existence. Absolutely could not be more excited for this. But Air Ride on the GameCube was a bit of a niche title on an already niche console, and I'd be willing to bet most people watching the video haven't played the original. And just so you know, I'll be referring to them as Air Ride 1 and Air Ride 2 now to avoid confusion between Air Ride and Air Riders. So for newcomers, here's some quick background info on Air Ride 1. I was left a bit unpolished due to issues during development, having to restart really late, just scrap everything. There's a really good Beta 64 video I will have linked to the description, came out recently. Certainly watch that if you want to get some details about the development history of the game. But all of the behind-the-scenes physics engine magic that determined how you moved and interacted with the environment or objects, it all felt great and was consistent once you mastered the game. But things were a bit rough around the edges with some jarring physics quirks that you really had to spend a lot of time learning to work around. I was worried that the best parts of the physics systems wouldn't make it into Air Ride 2, but I have never been happier to be wrong. Never doubt Masahiro Sakurai. Air Ride 1 set such a high bar for game feel that I was astounded when I got my hands on the Air Ride 2 demo for the first time, and within seconds I knew the game was going to be perfect. Every single micro detail down to the acceleration, the gravity, machine stats, sound design, the UI, and the gorgeous simplicity of it all is absolutely pristine. Air Ride 2 feels like Air Ride 1 with a boatload of polish applied in only ways that do not take away from how it feels to ride, like in the first game. That is really important because now a lot of my elite ball knowledge is going to transfer over. One of the best things about Air Riders is that it's extremely accessible. I mean, there are literally 2 buttons and a joystick. Even your grandma can do that. Now, will your grandma beat you at Air Riders? Yeah, probably not. So while it's accessible, no PvP game is easy, especially if you're new. Just like any game, there are going to be details that some people miss or don't pick up on right away. There's a lot of nuance to how your riders and machines control, tons of unique interactions that aren't directly explained, so that's where I come in, to help bridge the gap between my 2 decades of experience and the newcomers, rusty veterans, or anyone in between. So let's get started. Here are my most helpful tips, biggest discoveries, and most interesting observations about Air Riders so far. The first thing I want to bring up is mostly in regards to races and going fast, but the principles apply to every single mode in the game. So, the number one most important thing you need to be doing is always be boosting. Now, obviously you do want to boost a lot in a racing game, right? So, most racing games have ways to boost or go faster, but look at Mario Kart for example. There are times where certain karts are better at straightaways and some are better with drift boosting. So sometimes depending on the character or kart, it'd be faster to just drive in a straight line than to try and drift boost a lot, or vice versa. So boosting is a core mechanic to Air Ride 2, with charge boost being the only button you could even press in the game. But there are other ways to boost: rails, boost panels, copy abilities, and so on. So how do we best use all of that? In Air Ride 1, the always be boosting rule was true, and you usually achieved that by charging and boosting at every possible turn, and always routing to chain corner boosts into boost panels or something. Importantly for this, the tracks in Air Ride 1 were smaller, meaning a charge boost got you proportionally a lot farther than it would in Air Ride 2. With Air Ride 2 giving boosts when you defeat enemies or hit other riders, use specials, or a ton of new abilities, boosting is more important than ever on these larger tracks. So when you're racing an Air Ride, tilting a top ride, or swerving through City Trial, you want to look for every boost opportunity you can. Waddle Dee on the side of the road? That's a boost. A ramp you can briefly fly off of and land quickly? That's a boost. Another rider on a machine that's about to brake right before the finish line? That's a boost. If you keep always be boosting in mind, you'll pick up the details on how to get there through experience and developing game knowledge. And that's really the best way to learn, so that way you'll know exactly how to use your favorite rider and machine combos the best. So we know we're going to be boosting a lot and chaining boosts together as much as we can. It's a lot easier to chain boosts when you keep your speed, right? So newer players tend to love boosting around the track, but never really get the full value out of it because they keep bumping into walls and totally dropping whatever speed they had. So the second big piece of advice I can give you is about boosting, drifting, and turning. It's so important to realize that in Air Ride, you are literally always drifting, and you need to go with the flow. Turning normally like you would in Mario Kart isn't going to work all the time, because in Air Ride you are always getting acceleration by default, and the machine's traction is low enough to where you might feel like you're just sliding around the whole time. But you need to lean into that. In Air Ride, that relationship between auto acceleration and sliding with momentum is the core of the game and why these tracks and machines can work together so well. The corners can be extremely tight, and there aren't usually a ton of straightaways. The straight paths that do exist are usually littered with speed opportunities like ramps and enemies and rails to make it more dynamic. So to help control your character a bit better and stop losing your speed, the beginner lessons do teach you about brake tapping, which is a big deal, and I think it's awesome that they included that lesson. But it cannot be emphasized enough just how important it is for you to understand the mechanic fully. Find a machine that you like and really pay attention to how it feels to drive around, how it handles corners and 180s, how does it handle in a fight rather than a race, how good is it at gliding. There are a ton of things to learn and, really fine tune and hone in on so you can really understand your favorite combos. So just try out machines and pay attention to their stats and how that feels for you. Different rider and machine combos are going to need different timing and amounts of brake tapping or boost charging to handle different turns, depending on their stats or unique properties. Some machines like the Air Ride 1 Slick Star or Swerve Star are extremely good at cornering with brake taps due to their speed, handling, and other properties. Now, on the other hand, machines like the Rex Wheelie need a lot of space to turn, and they have to make sure that they get their boost at every corner since their acceleration is low and their speed doesn't really recover from brake tapping as quickly. With just those two concepts, you're already going to understand the flow of the game much better than the average beginner, so just internalize the info the game gives you and really feel it out. Air Ride is such a satisfying game to improve at because it just means you're building up your skills so you can take advantage of more opportunities for fun, and the game throws a lot of that at you. Speaking of fun, I'm kind of tired of the wordy analytical stuff, so let's talk less about concepts and more about cool details I've noticed, because even though I mentioned Sakurai kept Air Ride 2 feeling extremely similar to 1, there actually are quite a few differences that I find interesting, such as the boost panels you'll see on the ground. In Air Ride 1, you actually didn't get the boost unless your car was touching the ground. Now, I don't mean like it is in Air Ride 2 where, if you're in the air, you're not going to get the boost. No, in the first game, if you were riding one of the wheelies, you could use the boost pad. This included DDD, who was on his special wheelie bike. But if you were using anything besides those 4 options, the boost pad wouldn't work. Now, you still could get the boost by tapping A when you drove over one, and it did work for all of the machines, but having to brake just to get a boost was a little counterintuitive at best, and it likely made a lot of people feel like the game wasn't even working right, because that, it makes sense that you drive over a boost panel and you get a boost, but you had to tap A because technically you're hovering on a warp star or whatever. Good news though, that has been fixed in Air Ride 2, and finally we can enjoy an uninterrupted ride over boost panels as Sakurai intended. Also in the first game, spin attacks felt a little inconsistent and were annoying to activate quickly. You had to roll the stick in the majority of a circle in order to start one, and even if you did get the timing down, the hitboxes felt a little small for how fast the game moves. No longer are we beholden to such inconveniences, as we now have improved technology. They made the spin attack, or quick attack, or quick spin, what's it called? Yeah, quick spin, I think. Now just requires a quick back and forth on the stick, and you're good. This and an increased hitbox size makes spin attacks much more consistent, and therefore much better. You should be using these a lot. Don't forget it, because they are easy to overlook at first. This next mechanic isn't all that in-depth, but it's another thing I highly recommend getting good at, and that's just pressing the A button in the air. When you're gliding and you press A, you'll start to quickly slam down to the ground. Obviously, that's a good way to land from ramps, buildings, or whatever, but it's also an extremely strong tool for adjusting your movement mid-glide. I always try and aim high, then adjust downward since you're only going to be able to go up when you have higher speed. Tapping A lets you fine-tune your height quickly. This is extremely helpful for landing between maybe two horizontal walls or just making sure you land on time. So aim high, and if you need to make a sharp adjustment, charge dropping, as I call it, will help you glide exactly where you want. Now, one fun thing I noticed was that if you have a Switch 2 Pro controller, the one with the grip buttons, you can play Air Ride without ever touching a face button or trigger on the controller. Assign A and B to the left and right grip buttons, and you literally don't need to lift a finger to play the game. Something important I've learned over the years is to manage your airtime. A huge part of Air Riders is riding in the air. Who would have thought? Well, one thing that isn't explained super well is the gliding stat, or rather how long your machine will be able to glide and climb before losing height. There are multiple values working behind the scenes to correlate to the glide stat we see in game, but for our learning purposes today, all we're going to look at is the boost meter. In the air, you obviously can't boost because pressing A slams you into the earth. Now, Sakurai decided that since the boost meter wasn't being used in flight, it should represent how much flight time you have left. Just a simple and effective way to reuse UI elements. I love that. But when you play the game, you'll quickly realize, hey, wait, I'm starting to fall and my glide meter isn't even half full. What gives? Well, I gotta be real with you, I don't know why, but I can tell you how to use that info anyways. So when the glide meter approaches the halfway point, you'll start to lose your vertical momentum, and that's how I'd recommend looking at the glide meter. When it's completely full, if you haven't hit the ground by then, you'll have lost all of your vertical speed. Now, I do think city trial power-ups affect the display weirdly and cause you to glide for a lot longer than normal after the meter is full, but that was just an Air Ride 1, and I know there were some bugs associated with that as well, and I just haven't been able to test yet in Air Ride 2, so regardless, here's what that means for you. If you want to glide really far, you'll need to climb and get height early. Sakurai makes sure to specifically refer to the act as gliding and not flying, because most of the machines in this game really can't fly. They don't have much vertical speed or control, meaning you're mostly going to be parallel to the ground rather than pointed up. Since gravity affects you so much in this game, you'll want to get ahead of it by using most of your initial speed to go straight up after you launch off a ramp, then you'll even out and glide forward most of the way down. Now, sometimes you don't want to point directly up as far as you can go. It really depends on the vehicle. You'll certainly get a feel. You'll know what I mean as soon as you start trying it, so just give it a try. This reframing of the glide meter really helped me to recontextualize it as gliding rather than flying, and since then I've been able to get so much more distance out of machines that go faster in the air, such as the Wing Star or Shadow Star, and especially the Paper Star in Air Ride 2. That thing is crazy in the air. Now, I think that's everything I want to give you today, so let's just go over a quick recap. We learned we should always be boosting and boost chaining. We learned that it's super important to use appropriate boosting and brake tapping. Quick spins are really strong, don't want to forget those. Charge dropping helps fine-tune your glide, pressing A when you're in the air. Gaining height early in a glide lets you go much farther. And always trust Sakurai. There are a ton of small tricks and mechanics to master, but what we covered today will definitely put you ahead of the average player. So take this info with you, go try as many things as you can, figure out a rider and machine combo you like, and maybe you'll be on the same path I was 2 decades ago, learning how much fun it was to explore the depth in a seemingly simple kids party game. I genuinely have never been more excited for a video game, at least not since Brawl in 2008. Air Ride is a franchise I never thought would even be a franchise. This game means so much to me after the countless hours my friends and siblings spent mostly in City Trial Free Run just making up fun games like we were on a playground. And that's really my favorite thing about Air Ride. There are so few barriers between you and the fun. You want to race? Pick pick a mode, and in a few seconds, you're going to go super fast already. You know, parting the sea in front of you in this race, like, right after you're done with that, you could immediately jump into another race or a different mode. There's no inventory to manage, no loot boxes, no battle passes, no DLC, no live service content update cycle, no engagement optimized matchmaking. Sakurai has always added fun things to his games for the reason of, you know, I bet someone out there will enjoy it. And that's what I'm going to keep doing. So if you want more Kirby Air Riders content, it's 2025, you know how to subscribe. I plan on making a video series going over every machine and how to best use their different stats and what use cases they're best at. And I'll be showcasing a lot of gameplay of every mode over on my Twitch channel once it comes out. And if you want to join and find other people to air ride with, a link to my community Discord will be in the description. I sincerely appreciate you watching my video all the way to the end, and I hope you have a great time with Kirby Air Riders. I'll see you out there.